Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Friday, July 26th, 2024. It has been 71 days since we have started reading, with 148 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 480 pages left to go and are 23.57% of the way through Finnegans Wake. Welcome to episode 13 of Wake, the podcast which invokes the luck of the Irish and the forgiveness of the purists, as we travel down the Giant's Causeway to help fulfill a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegans Wake out loud just once. I am your host, Toby Malone, setting out on that hero's journey in the way that is always inevitable, where the sojourner strikes out temporarily alone to test themselves. All of this is to say that for the first time ever, my ever-in-demand co-host, TJ Young, is not with me this week. He is workshopping a musical in New Jersey. I am also visiting family in Australia at the moment, so with the time difference, I needed to look further afield for a guest this week. And in fact, this week, I only had to look as far as the next room. Joining me for this week's episode of Wake, and to read a few sections of the first part of 1-7, are my parents, Mick and Jo Malone. Welcome, guys.
G'day.
Thanks for having us.
Very glad to have you here along on this journey. So give us a sense, what is your background with James Joyce and Finnegans Wake?
Well, I'm a Joycean from a long way back, but never Finnegans Wake. It was the most unintelligible thing I've ever seen in my life, so I didn't bother even trying to get stuck in it. But I love Ulysses.
Yeah.
And the Dubliners and all those things.
Right.
But not Finnegan.
Not Finnegan. So this is good. This is a way of filling in the last piece of your bucket list, just like I have. So, and you're the one who got me started on James Joyce. So this, I will say, ladies and gentlemen, is my father's fault. The fact that this exists. What about you, Mum? Do you have a Joyce?
I was an avid reader of Joyce, never quite got to Finnegans Wake. However, and it did take me 3 goes to read Ulysses, and I wore that as a badge of honour because I think I was the only human I knew that had actually read it. But that was some time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, yeah. And once you've started with the Wake, Ulysses feels easy. So all the purists out there spitting up their Guinness to say that any kind of Joyce is easy, but and of course we also have a family connection. I haven't mentioned this on the podcast yet. Is that my grandmother, my father's mother? Her name was Joyce. So we have that family connection. Is that Joyce is a family name,
clearly named
after James Joyce. Born around the same time that he was writing, so surely my great grandmother had literature in mind. Have you had a chance to listen to any of the episodes of Wake?
No.
It's
far too busy, mate. I'm a writer. A writer of some note.
That is true. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, you're. We released your autobiography recently, 2 Ranks on the Road. And it was with the conclusion of that I found myself with all this spare time, and I thought reading Finnegans Wake was the way to fill it in. But we will link to how to buy copies of my dad's autobiography about time in the Australian military, which I edited. We'll link to that in the show notes at the end. And you've heard a few, haven't you, Mum?
I have. I listened to all of the first one, and I've listened to snippets of the other ones along the way.
Perfect. Excellent. You're a veteran then. We have hundreds of listens on Spotify, but I'm still not sure how many of them are people and how many are robots. But and then we also have an Irish connection in that you have a real connection to the Irish rebels. And this has sort of always been an interest of yours.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
I'm reading The Secret Army at the moment, which is the IRA. But my grandparents were Republicans back in the 20s and 30s. and they named my father Amon de Valera Malone. So, which he hated, of course, and he tried to get rid of it. I found his army driver's licence. He had scrawled it out and wrote Ned in there.
Right.
So, we've got a few links, and I went to Ireland and stuck my fingers in the bullet holes in
the post office?
In the post office columns, and got a feel for how the torturous thing was. They had a gunboat on the Liffey firing directly at them.
Right.
So it was torture.
So obviously there's a lot of that history that's going on around the same time that Joyce was writing. But it's interesting that Joyce had very little to do with the Republican movement. He last set foot in Ireland in 1912. And so he was gone well before all of the shooting started in 1916. But he was born the same year as De Valera. So he would have been a contemporary, but he had really very much felt that Ireland had betrayed him, and that was partially because of the way that Dubliners was received, and the original publisher of Dubliners burned every copy except one because of that obscenities. But we also have the family history of the uprising. I mean, the Malones have been in Australia for 150 years, but even so, we have that. So I'm very glad to have you along to read some Wake, because we had Meg, who did the song, the Ballad of Perth O'Reilly, and then Bridie did the list of men names that HCE has been called. And then Georgia was on last week's episode where she read the second half of the quiz. And so now I thought, why not make this even more of a family affair? I've got to get my son on to do some as well at some point. Cormac will do some. So in our last episode, we spent a lot of time with the quiz, which laid out lots of facts and figures lurking in the background of the story, a lot of this Irish Republican stuff that we've been talking about, and gave us a real look at HCE's children, Sean, Shem, and Izzy. And so in this next chapter, we're getting into some hardcore sibling rivalry as Sean goes hard at Shem, tearing him down and talking about all of his faults. So, as I said, last week, Georgia was my guest, and so bringing it up might have been a bit of a spicy topic then, but to cover myself, I thought I'd wait until this week to talk about the idea of sibling rivalry, and this episode is all about sibling rivalry. I don't know if you have any memories of sibling rivalry between me and my sister, or you and your siblings. Good relate. Oh no, we got a zip to lip gesture happening over here. No one wants to. I don't know. Do you have memories of us growing up being rivals, or?
Oh well, there's always competition, and there was definitely as Georgia, the younger sibling, got towards high school age, there was a definite divergence in interests, so that she wasn't following behind you. Or competing with you. So she'd made that decision. I think she made that decision quite early when she was quite a small baby, but it actually manifested itself in the teen years. So it's definitely there. There's always that the one that goes before is always the one that's noticed, and I'm sure you find that with your kids. Mm-hmm. And I found that with my brothers. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, well, I'm not going to try and do what they did because they're too good at it, so I'll do something completely different.
Right. I'll marry an army bloke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and what about you and your sister? Any rivalry, or you guys were pretty good friends?
Not really. I was away at boarding school most of that time, mm-hmm. and she was my lovely Helly darling, and she went to a boarding school in Mudgee, and I was in Bathurst.
Right.
So I never really saw her until I was 16. I was a little kid. We loved sleeping in the same sleep-out bedroom. She'd talk all night and tell stories. And fantastic little kid. She was Dad's favourite. Her massive curly hair. She loved swimming in puddles of water. And all sorts of people would pull her out and bring her home. But she was a lovely kid.
All right, so not much rivalry there. No Sean and Shem happening in that environment. So we'll find out a little bit more today, because we're going to hear about Sean and Shem today. So I've negotiated a short reading from both of you. So you're going to read the first couple of pages of the chapter, and then I'll take over. As always, a reading from the Penguin Modern Classics edition of Finnegans Wake, which was published in 2000 with a foreword by Shem as Dean. Today we'll be reading the first half of chapter 1.7 from pages 168 to 182 in this edition. This is a section that is titled Shem the Penman by Oxford World Classics edition of 2012, which also includes brief summaries of what is happening in each subsection, which we will address at the end of the reading. So you've both agreed, as I said, to read the first couple of pages. There are no internal breakpoints, so we're just going to change at the end of a segment, and then I'll take over for the rest. And now, without further ado, Finnegans Wake.
Shem is as short for Shemus as Jem is jokey for Jacob. A few tough necks are still gettable, who pretend that aboriginality he was of respectable stemming. He was an outlex between the lines of Raganar and Blaubard and Horald Hairwire, and an in-law to Captain the Rev. Mr. Birdwood de Trop Blogg was among them his most distant connections. But every honest-to-goodness man in the land of the space of today knows that his back life will not stand being written about in black and white. Putting truth and untruth together as a shot may be made at what this hybrid actually was like to look at. Shem's bodily get-up, it seemed, included an adze of a skull, an 8 of a lark's eye, the wheel of a nose, one numb arm of a sleeve, 40 hairs off his uncrowned, 18 to his mock lip, a trio of barbells from his mega-geg chin, Salmon's son, the wrong shoulder higher than the right, all ears, an artificial tongue with a natural curl, not a foot to stand on, a handful of thumbs, a blind stomach, a deaf heart, a loose liver, 2/5 of 2 buttocks, 1 Gleatstein of avodapoida for him, man root of all evil, salmon kelt's thin skin, eel's blood in his cold toes, a bladder tristended, so much so that young Master Shemmy, on his very first debauch at the very dawn of proto-history, seeing himself such and such, when playing with thistle words in their garden nursery, grief for Tropheo at Fig Street 111, Chauvelin, Old Holand, we would go back there for sounds, peelings and scents. Would we now for an anise, would we for full score 8 and a Loretta? For 12 blocks, 1 bob, 4 testers, 1 groat, not for a dinar, not for Joe. Dictated to all of his little brethren and sweeterines, the first riddle of the universe, asking when is a man not a man, telling them to take their time, young fries, and wait till the tide stops. For from the first his day was a fortnight, and offering the prize of a bittersweet crab, a little present from the past, for their copper age was yet unminted to the winner. One said, when the heavens are Quakers, a second said, when Bohemian and lips, a third said, when whole hard a jiffy, when he is a North stick and determined to. The next one said, when the angel of death kicks the bucket of life. Still another said, when the wine at wit's ends, and still another, when lovely woman stoops to conk him. One of the littlest said to me, Shem, when Papa prepared the harbour, one of the wittiest said, when he ye ablokkunen, and he smeared herself so shuken. Still one said, when you are old and grey, fall full with sleep. And still another, when we deader, Walkner, and another when he is just only after having been semicised. Another when, yea, he hath no manners, and one when those pigs they begin now that they will flies up until the luft. One were wrong, so Shem himself, the dictator, took the cake, the correct solution being, all give it up. When he is a yours till the rending of the rocks, sham.
Shem was a sham and a low sham, and his lowness creeped out first via foodstuffs. So low was he that he preferred Gibson's tea-time salmon tinned, as inexpensive as pleasing, to the plumpest roe-heavy lax, or the friskiest par or smalt troutlet that ever was gaffed between Like's Lip and Island Bridge. And many was the time he repeated in his botulism that no jungle-grown pineapple ever smacked like the whoppers he shook out of Aeneas cans. Findlater and Gladstone's Corner House, England. None of your inch-thick blue-blooded balaclava fried at belief steaks or juice jelly legs of the Grex's molten mutton, or greasily gristly grunters, goupons, or slice upon slab of luscious goose bosom, with lump after lump of plum pudding stuffing all aswim in a swamp of bogger gravy for that green-hearted you'd. Rosbiff of old Zealand, he could not attouch it. See what happens when your somatophage merman makes his fancy in our vegetarian swan. He even ran away with Hun's self and became a far soonerite, saying that he would far sooner muddle through the harsh of lentils in Europe than meddle in Ireland's split little pea. Once when among those rebels in a state of hopelessly helpless intoxication, the Piscivore strove to live sits round Peel to either nostril, hiccuping apparently impromptued by the hibbat he had with his glottal stop, that he cuckold flourish for ever by the smell, as the sitzer, as the crendron, like a skedar of the fonts on mountains, with limon on of Lebanon. Oh, the lowliness of him was beneath all up to that sunk to. No like by like fire water or first served first shot, or gullet burn gin, or honest brew Barrett beer either. Oh dear no. Instead, the tragic jester sobbed himself way-whingingly sick of life on some sort of rhubarbarous, maundarin, yellow-green, funkel blue, widgegut dying applejack, squeezed from sour grape fruche, and to hear him twixt his sedimental cup slips when he had gulped down much too many gourds of it, retching off to almost as low with swillers, who always knew notwithstanding when they had had enough, and were rightly indignant at the wretch's hospitality when they found to their horror they could not carry another drop. It came straight from the noble white fat. Jo, open wide, sat Jo, her wide vat, Jo, the wine vat of the most serene Magiansky as archdiocese. If she is a duck, she's a douches, and when she has a her bore, it's not her fault, now is it? Art touch-ups, funny you're grinning at, fancy you're in her yet, Fanny Urinia. Ain't that swell, hey? P. Mengro, talk about lowness, any dog's quantity of it simply oozed out thickly from this dirty little blacking beetle. For the very fourth snap, the Tulloch-turned bull girl with her cold-blooded Kodak shotted the as-yet unremunderanded national apostate who was cowardly gun and camera shy, taking what he fondly thought was a shortcut to Cairfair, soak Amerigus, bias the shipstream pride win after having buried a hatchet not so long before, by the wrong goods exent nummer desh to tren into paradise, fruiterers and musical florists with his chavi, sa shin, shilly pen. She knew the vice out of Bridewell was a bad fast man by his walk on the spot. John's is a different butcher's. Next place you are uptown, pay him a visit, or better still, come to buy. You will enjoy cattleman's spring meat. John's is now quite divorced from baking. Fattens, kills, flays, hangs, draws, quarters and pieces. Feel his lambs. Feel how sheep. XX. His liver too is great value. A spatiality XXX. Communicated.
Around that time, moreover, one generally, for lovermony hoped or at any rate suspected among morticians that he would early turn out badly, develop hereditary pulmonary TB, and do for himself one dandy time, nay, of a pelting night blanketed creditors, hearing a coarse song and splash off Eden Key, sighed and rolled over. Sure, all was up, but though he fell heavily and locally into debit, not even then could such an antinomian be true to type. He would not put fire to his cerebrum. He would not throw himself in Liffey. He would not expound himself with pneumantics. He refused to Sappho-crake himself with a sod. With the foreign devil's leave, the frayed-born fraud diddled even death. Anzi, cabled, but shaking the worth out of his mouth. Garda Costa Leporello, Stasis Crex, from his Nero publican asylum to his Jonathan for a brother. Here Tokay, gone to Mori, where splooched, do something, fireless, and had answer. Inconvenient, David! You see, chaps, it will trickle out, freakily of course, but the tom and the shorty of it is, he was in his bardic memory low. All the time he kept on treasuring with condign satisfaction each and every crumb of track talk, covetous of his neighbour's ward, and if ever, during a munda conversation, commoted in the nation's interest, delicate tippets were thrown out to him touching his evil courses by some well-wishers, vainly pleading by scriptural arguments with the opprobrious papist about trying to brace up for the kaidos of the thing. Scally wag, and be a men instead of a dem scrounger. Dish it all, such as, pray, what is the meaning, Sousy, of that continental expression, if you ever came across it? We think it is a word transpiciously like a canaille. Or, did you ever anywhere kennel on your gullible's travels or during your rural troubadouring happen to stumble upon a certain gay young nobleman whimpering to the name of Low Swine, who always addresses women out of the one corner of his mouth, lives on loans and is furtive free yours of age? Without one sigh of haste like the supreme prig he was, and not a bit sorry, he would pull a vacant landlubber's face, root with earwaker's pensile on the outer of his lousher, and then, lisping, the prattle-pate parnella to kill time, and swatting his dead best to think what under the canopies of Jansen Crest would any decent son of an albio gentleman who had been to a university think, let a lent hit a hint and begin to tell all the intelligentsia admitted to that Tamalisi, Samtalasi, compilation, since still and before, for physicians, lawyers, merchant, belfry politicians, agricolous manufrauders, secretanes of the Pure River Society, philanthropics, lodging on as many boards around the panesthetic on at the same time as possible, the same whole live-long swine story of the entire low cornet existence, abusing his deceased ancestors wherever the sods were, and one moment terror-booming great blunderguns, about his far-framed fire poppermore, Mr. Hum-Hum, whose history, climate and entertainment made the first of his sept and always up to debt, though even's ears owl many finds he faces, and another moment viniversas crouching, 3 cheers, ha! For his rotten little ghost of a peppy beg, Mr. Himmy Shimmy, a blighty, a reeky, a lighty, a scrapey, a baby, a ninny, a dirty seventh among thieves, and always bottom sawyer, till now one knowed how homely home could be, giving unsolicited testimony on behalf of the absent, as glib as Eve's water to those present, who meanwhile, with increasing lack of interest in the semantics, allowed various subconscious smickers to dribble slowly across their features, unconsciously explaining for inkstands, with it meticulously bordering on the insane, the various meanings of all the different foreign parts of speech he misused, and cuttlefishing every lie unshrinkable about all the other people in the story, leaving out, of course, foreconsciously, the simple wharf and plague and poison they had cornered him about, until there was not a snoozer among them, but was utterly undeceived in the heel of the reel by the recital of the rigmarole. He went without saying that the cull disliked anything anyway, approaching a plain, straightforward stand-up or knock-down row, and as often as he was called in to umpire any octagonal argument among slang-wangers, the accomplished washout always used to rub shoulders with the last speaker and clasp shakers, the hand touch which is speech without words, and agree to every word as soon as half-uttered. Command me, your servant good. I revere you. How, my seer? Be drinking that? Quite truth, gracious. I'm Yush. See you are in hearing. Also goods, please it. Me sure, be filling this. Quite so, you said it. Upsa fellow. Muchas gracias. Is there firing on me? Is there Gerlich on you? To your good self, your sulphur. And then once focus his whole unbalanced attention upon the next octagonist who managed to catch a listener's eye, asking and imploring him out of his piteous one-winker, Hemptopsia diademonios, whether there was anything in the world he could do to please him and to overflow his tumble tantalizer for him yet once more. One hail cannon night for his departure was attended by a heavy downpour. As very recently as some 1,000 rains ago, he was therefore treated with what closely resembled parsonal violence, being sogged all unsuspectingly through the deserted village of Tumbling on the Leafy from Mr. Van Homrij's house at 82 Mabbott's Mall as far as Green Patch, beyond the brickfields of Salmon Pool, by rival teams of slow spires, counter quick-climbers, who finally, as rarely they had been detained out rather latish, thought, business hits business, they had better be streaking for home after their Auburn to Auburn, with thanks for the pleasant evening, one and all disgustedly, instead of ruggering him back, and awake, reconciled, though they were as jealous as could be cullions about all the truffles they had brought on him, to a friendship fast and furious, which merely arose out of the noxious pervert's perfect lowness. Again, there was a hope that people looking on him with the contempt of the contemptibles, after first giving him a roll in the dirt, might pity and forgive him, if properly deloused. But the pleb was born a quick low and sank allowing till he stank out of sight. All Saints beat Belial. Mickey, goals to Nitchill. Not possible. Already? In nowhere has yet the whole world taken part of himself for his wife. By nowhere have poor parents sentenced to worm's blood and thunder for life. Not yet has the imp from Corpskicker forced the earth out of Engleterre. Not yet have the shaction and judder on the mound of a word made wear. Not yet witchy on wench struck fire from his heath from on Howth. Not yet his archbaleen forspoken peace upon oath. Cleft foot from Hempel must tumble, blame fool gardeners bound to fall. Broken eggs will forsooth give bitten apples, for where theirs is will, there's his wall. But the Mountsill frowns on the mill stream while their Madsons leap on his bier, and her rill strill lifts to his merksy all her daft doors laughs in her ear. Till the four shores of death Tory Island, let the dews dumb earwigs arrail. Herp, herp, for their misunderstandings chirps the ballot of Perse O'Rail. O fortunatus Calautius! Lefty takes the cherub cake while right close his hood. Hoof. Darkies never done tug that coon out to play excretory, anti-sexuous, mix-onetic, gassy pure flesh and blood games written and composed and sung and danced by Nicemius Gnemon, same as pickaninnies play all day, those old, none of your honeys and rubbers, games for fun, an element we used to play with Dinah and old Joe, kicking her behind and before, and the yellow girl kicking him behind old Joe. Games like Tom Tom the Thunder Man, Put the Wind Up the Peeler, Hat in the Ring, Helly Barber and the 40 Thieves, Michael on the Lucky Pig, Nickel in the Slot, Sheila Harnett and her cow, Adam and Elle, Humble Bumble, Moggies on the Wall, Twos and Threes, American Jump, Fox Come Out of Your Den, Broken Bottles, Writing a Letter to Punch, Tip Top is a Sweet Store, Henressie Crump Expelled, Postman's Knock, Are We Fairlies Represented, Solomon's Silent Reading, Apple Tree Bearstone, I Know a Washerwoman, Hospitals, As I Was Walking, There Is One Yon's House in Dream Carlahoa, Battle of Waterloo, Colours, Eggs in the Bush, Haberdashery, Telling Your Dreams, What's the Time, Nap, Ducking Mammy, Last Man Standing, Healy Baboon and the Forky Thieves, Fickle Eyes and Futile Ears, Hand Married but once in my life and I'll never commit such a sin again, Zip Cooney Candy, Turkey in the Straw, This is the Way We Sow the Seed of a Long and Lusty Morning, Hops of Fun at Milliken's Make, I Seen the Toothbrush with Pat Farrell, Here's the Fat to Graze the Priest's Boots, When His Steam was like a Rembrandt round Mac Garvey. Now, it is notoriously known how on that surprisingly bludgeonly Unity Sunday when the Grand Jermagal all-star bout was harrowly the rage between our Welting Toms, Extraordinarity, and our Petty Thicks, the Marshall Lacey, with an Irish eyes of welcome were smiling, daggers down their backs. When the Roth Bison Blouse met the Nour Blank and Rogues and the Grim White and Cold Bet the Black Fighting Tans, categorically unimperforated by the Maxims, a rank funk getting the better of him, the scut in a bad fit of pyjamas fled like a leveret for his bare lives, to Talleyrand alone, Ahone Ahaza, pursued by the scented curses of all the village belles and without having struck one blow, Pig stole on him and was lust he lagging it, was because to dust he shook, Kusky corked himself up tight in his ink battle house, badly the worse for Booger's ass, there to stay in a far for the life, where, as there was not a moment to be lost, after he had boxed around with his forte piano till he was whole batch, bamp him and bump him blues, he collapsed carefully under a bed tick from Schwitzer's, his face enveloped into a dead warrior's telemac, with a lullabo's somme de bonnet and a wattle at his feet to stoke his energy of waiting, moaning feebly in Montgomery monotheme, but turned long and then a nation louder, while engaged in swallowing from a large ampular, that his Paudry's purgatory was more than a bloke could bear, hemi-paralysed by the tongue warfare and all the chamozo, Daily Maily, Follop Lace, Holy Maily, Muzzle Up Joss, his cheeks and trousers changing colour every time a gat croaked. How is that for low, ladies and gentle nuns? Why, dog of the crostal guns, whole continents rang with his Cairo-Corin lowness. Sheols of Howrus in chems upon divans, revolted Stella's vespertine ves among them, and a bare, oh, mention of the scaly Tybalt, ribald exclaimed, Puss! But would anyone short of a madhouse believe it? Neither of these clean little cherubim, Nero, nor no Booker's, nor Nestor himself, never nursed such a spoiled opinion of his monstrous marvellosity as did this mental and moral defective, here perhaps at the vanescence of his lowness, who was known to grunt rather than gunnered upon one occasion, while drinking heavily of spirits, that interlocutor, a liqueur at private privy secretary he used to pal around with in the Caverhaz, one Davy Brown Nolan, his heaven-laid twin. This ham-boned dog poet pseudoed himself under the hang name he gave himself of Beth Gellert in the porchway of a gypsy's bar. Shem always blaspheming. So holy writ, Billy, he would try, old belly, and pay this one manjack congregant of his 4 soups every lass of next mouth. Bolly, so sure as there's a tail on a comet, as a taste for a stork's 40-tooth, that is to say, to listen out 20 minutes more, bully his ballet imaginaire which was to be dubbed Wine, Women and Water Clocks, or How a Guy Thinks and Forks When He Is Going Batty, by Maestre Sheems de la Plume, some most dreadful stuff in a murderous mirror hand. That he was a boof, pardon me, aware of no other shag's pick, other Shakespeare's beard, either precisely unlike his polar and this is his, or precisely the same as whoops, parn, as what he fancied or guessed the sames as he was himself, and that Greek skook, duggings, and thuggery, though he was foxed like a bunny boy Roger, with all the tea-shop lionses of Lumdrum hiven-hosed up against him, being a lapsus linguo, with a rub-a-dub shorter temper, bad cad, dad, fad, sad, mad, nad, van, Haiti bear, the consequentials of causality professors, crosswords in post-precision, scruffer, most, and all that sort of a thing. If Ream stood to reason and his Lanka Levine lasted, he would wipe alley English spooker, multifunically spooking off the face of the earth. After the thorough fright he got that bloody Swithin's day, though every doorpost in much-tried Leucalizod was smeared with generous earthborn gore, and every free-for-all cobbleway slippery with the bloods of heroes, crying to welkins for others, and Noahs and culverts agush with tears of joy, our low water never had the common bar lamb's pluck to stir out and about the compound, while everyone else of the torchlit throng slashes and sliced alike, mobu on massa, wadded and battered around, yamp yam pamp yam, chanting the Galuli chorus from the monster book of palteratic purity, O pura e pia bella, in junk et sampam, or in secula sincularum, heads up on his bona fide avocation, the little folk creeping on all fours to their natural school, beat but childishly gleeful when a stray whizzer sang out intermediately, and happy belongers to the fairer sex on their usual quest for higher things, but vying with Lady Smythe to avenge Mac Jobber, when stone-stepping with their bickerstaffs on educated feet, plinkety-plonk across the seven-span pont, die calore, set up over the slop, after the war to end war by Messrs. A charitable government, for the only once, dear dos Fernandos, did he take a tom-tip Pipistrella Thraug, a 3-draw 18 Hawks power Dirticky telescope, luminous to larboard, only like the lamps in Nauaustras, out of his westernmost keyhole, spitting at the impenetrablum wetter, and it was Porgo Hastly that outnumb, with an each-way hope in his shivering soul as he prayed to the cloud incertitude of finding out for himself on account of all the cules in Kraukapaka or owing to all the codes eggs in Kalatava, whether true conciliation was forging ahead or falling back after celestious intemperance, and for devil's sake, why, with his see me see and his my see a corvers and his frocker fosca fusca layin loves in Mig seeing, he got the charm of his optical life when he found himself hic sunt linones at point-blank range, blinking down the barrel of an irregular revolver of the bulldog with a purpose pattern, handled by an unknown quarreller who supposedly had been told off to shade and shoot shy Shem should the shit show his shiny snout out of it a while, to look facts in their face before being hosed and creased, uprip him and jap him by 6 or a dozen of the gay boys. What paraseum pleum in the names of Deculion and Pyrrha, and the incensed privy and the licensed pantry gods and Stator and Victor and Cut and Run and the whole misa redonda of Laurencio Achulas in Convocation was this disinterestingly low human type, this calumnious column of claracity, this Bengalese beacon of velocity, this animite aper of atrocity, really at, it will be precise to qualify, for he seems in a bad case. The answer to do all the ditties in one deedle would sound, from pulling himself on his most flavoured canal, the huge chest house of his elders, the Popa Preta and some Navisco navvies, he had flickered up and flitted down into a drug and drunkery addict, growing megalomane of a loose past. This explains the litany of the septunctual letter trumpets honorific, high-pitched, erudite, neoclassical, which he so loved so patricianly to manuscribe after his name. It would have diverted, if ever seen the shuddersome spectacle of this semi-demented zany amid the insipated grime of his glaucous den, making believe to read this uselessly unreadable blue book of Eccles, Edition de Pentenebris, even yet sighs the most different doctor, Poindexter, authorized Bowdler and censor. It can't be repeated. Turning over 3 sheets to at a wind, telling himself delightedly, no espel or more so, that every splurge on the vellum he blundered over was an Eichling vision more gorgeous than the one before TITS, a Rochelle cottage by the sea, for nothing forever, a lady's try-on hosiery raffled at Liberty, a sewer full of guinea gold wine with Branco Monja Padna pie, and 6-cylinder oyster worth $1 billion a bite, an entire opera house. There was to be a stamping room only in the prompter's box. And ever the more his queue kept swelling, and of enthusiastic noblewomen flinging every coronet crimson stitch they had off at his proscenium, one after the others, amagoded into a just loosening himself in their gaiety pantheomime, when egad, sir, according to all accounts, Rick, he squealed at the top squall in deal little shimlock up yellin', "Gee whiz, d'you hear that far? Soap you are! Loud gout of salvias, juice like a Boyd." For fully 5 minutes, infinitely better that Baronton McClucken, with a scrumptious cocked hat and 3 green cheese and tangerine trinity plumes on the right handle side of the Aurelius head, a coat McFarlane, the Kesserus cut, you understand, a Spaniard's digger at his ribs, Alfani at Punxsut, an azul blue bow sheet for his blouse bosom blossom, and a Dean's crozier that he won from Cardinal Lindadurry and Cardinal Carchin-Gary and Cardinal Laureaturdi and Cardinal Occidentialia. Oh, in the Dearby Derby doubled for falling first over the hurdles, madam, on the otter scent, AATSOT. But what with the murky light, the botchy print, the tattered cover, the jig-jag page, the fumbling fingers, the fox-trotting fleas, the lee-bed lice, the scum on his tongue, the drop in his eye, the lump in his throat, the drink in his pottle, the inch in his palm, the wail in his wind, the grief from his breath, the fog of his mind-fag, the buzz in his brain-tree, the tick of his conscience, the height of his rage, and the gush down his fundament, the fire in his gorge, the tickle of his tail, the bane in his bullyugs, the squints in his soil, the rot in his eater, the echo in his era, the totters of his toes, the tetters on his tummy-tum, the rats in his garret, the bats in his belfry, the budgerigars and bumble-o-some bowbirds, the hullabaloo and the dust in his ears. Since it took him a month to steal a march, he was a hard set to memorize more than a word a week. Hakes Hawlin, Hook's fist, can you beat it? Whoa! I say, can you bait it? Was there ever of such low-down blackguardism? Positively, it woolies one to think over it. Yet, the bumper sprinkler used to boast aloud, alone to himself, with a accent on it, with Minfader, with a boa constructor, and Hoy was a lexical student, parole and corrected with a blackboard, trying to copy the stage Engelsman he brought their house down on, shouting, "Bravure, Sir Chules, letter perfect, colossal loose wallet, spatche." How had he been towed out of all the families of the Klondikers from Pew Purich, Swab Pays, the land of Nod, Shruggers country, Pension, Danubia home, and Barbaropolis, who had settled and stratified in the capital city in his hebdromedary metropolitization as sun-blistered, moon-plastered, gory, wheedling, jovial, licherous, and full, ordered off the gorgeous premises in most cases on account of the smell, which all cookmaids eminently objected to as reassembling the abominable pozzo that welled out of the pozzo, instead of cuthering all those model households' plain, wholesome pothooks, a thing he never possessed of his Nigerian own. What do you think Volgiano did but study, with stolen fruit, how acutely to copy all their various styles of signature, so one day to utter an epical forged check on the public for his own private profit, until, as just related, the Dustbin's United Scullery Maids and House Help's sorority, better known as Sluttery's Malted Fot, turned him down and assisted nature by unitedly shooing the source of annoyance out of the place altogether, and totally on the heat of the moment, holding one another's gonk for no one, hound or scrub lady, not even the Turk, ungreekable in pursuit of the amenable, dared whiff the polecat close range. And making some pointing remarks, as they done so at the perfects at the sniffy, Your Honour, a boon the lio why a stunk, mister. James wishes to hear from wearers of banded female costumes, gratefully received wadmal jumper, rather full pair of culottes and on other garmentaries to start city life together. His Jims is out of job, would sit and write. He has lately committed one of the then commandments, but she will now assist superior, built, domestic, regular layer. Also got the boot. He appreciates it. Copies. Abortisement. One cannot even begin to post-figure out a statuesque ante as to how slow in reality the excommunicated drumchondriac Nate Hamus really was. Who can say how many pseudo-stylic Shamiana, how many of the most venerated public impostures, how many piously forged palimpsests slipped in the first place by this morbid process of the pelagiarist pen? Be that as it may, but for light fantastic of his nose's glow as it slid luciferously within an inch of its page, he would touch at its from time to other the red eye of its fear and satisficiousness, to ensign the colours by the beerlets in the mathness, and his educandies to outhew to themselves in the cry of girl glee, gember, inkware, chon chambre, sincero, zinzanabar, inkture, and gin. Nibs never would have quelled the seraph to sheepskin. By that rosy lampoon's effluvious burning, and with help of a semichronic flush in his pan, a guinea, a gherk, he gets there. He scrabbled and scratched and scrobbled and screamed nameless shamelessness about everybody he ever he met, even sharing a precipitation under the idlish terrier's umbrella of a showerproof wall, while all over, up and down the four margins of this rancid Shem stuff, the evil smeller, who was devoted to old Fader Sardanapalus, used to stipple endlessly inartistic portraits of himself in the act of reciting old Nietzscheabelli's monologue into year, Hanno, O no nano, exhale, Brubelman, Sir Otto, QED, a heartbreakingly handsome young Paolo with love lyrics for the goyles in his oils, a plaintiff's tanner vuse, a ducal income of 132 drachmas per yard from Broken Hill, Stranded Estate, camel breech Mannings cutting a great dash in her brand new 2 guinea dress suit, and a buried Hogsford hired for a fur-day evening, Mary Porty, Anna Lovely, long pair of inky Italian moustaches glistering with boric Vaseline and frangipani. How unwhisperingly so.
Fair deacon. Fair deacon. Oh, you read well, mate.
That was the first part of section 1.7 from Finnegans Wake. Immediate reactions. We got a live audience here, so what do you think of what you heard?
I have no idea what Shem was up to.
Right.
It sounded pretty lascivious.
Yeah, he's getting up to all sorts of things. And, the reputation is being sullied as we speak by his brother.
No, it was good. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, it's one of those things that it needs to be studied.
Yeah.
I feel as though I need to go back through the actual book and highlight the words that make sense and leave out the meanderings and the...
Well, that's all of it.
Yeah. And the made-up words to kind of that, okay, that's kind of stream of consciousness going off on thinking about something else or just playing with sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you to take out the words that actually mean something to get the flow of the story.
Well, a very famous book is called A Skeleton Key to Finnegans Wake, written by Joseph Campbell, which is apparently indispensable for reading this. Eiley, who was a previous guest, messaged me the other day and said, I just read about the skeleton key for Finnegans Wake. why didn't we talk about that? It's because I haven't read it, because I don't think that's the point.
Where is it? Where is it?
There's a book called The Skeleton Key to Finnegans Wake, which he breaks down a way to analyse it all. So that might be, maybe we'll read that out loud for the second season of Wake. But so we had two separate experiences here. You were listening without reading. Dad, you were reading along. Did that help at all when you were reading along?
Yeah, it did.
Did it?
It did. So even though your explanatory carry on.
The hyperbole. Yeah.
Oh,
that's where all that money you spent on private school went. It got me a degree in theatre, and so I should use it every now and then, don't you think?
Absolutely. Well, that's what it's for. You might as well.
So did you find your mind wandering?
No.
As you were listening, or just allowing it to become noise?
I was thinking about cooking dinner, actually.
Yeah, fair enough.
It didn't wander, but it kind of, I was listening to noise at thing and then it would come back.
Right.
Come back into it, yeah. So,
yeah. I mean, it's a lot like that. I find that my mind wanders like that when I'm reading.
Yeah.
And I'll go half a page and then we'll realise I haven't actually engaged mentally with any of the stuff, but been saying the noises. And there's lots of really fun stuff in there, like the stories of all the playground games that they would play, and some are very familiar, and then some are completely made up or corrupted, or lots of references back. It's one of those things that you could really spend a lot of time with.
The one that struck me was put the wind up the peeler.
Yeah, that's
what
right.
A great game.
What a game, yeah. We're going to chase down the policeman and make sure that he's... So how was the reading for you then? How did it feel to read this
Yeah,
stuff?
It wasn't too bad. Luckily, we've got the big words on the screen.
Yeah, I put it on the big screen and blew it up large.
It made it a lot easier to read. But
you were resisting when I first asked you to do it. You said you didn't want to...
Only because I'm not used to... the limelight.
But you are, as you always say, an autodidact.
I am an autodidact.
Right. So how does the autodidact approach Finnegans Wake?
Well, we did a bit on Ulysses at school, and our teacher, Mr. Gordon Bruton, when someone mentioned Finnegans Wake, he just turned around and started writing other stuff on the blackboard. He didn't want anything to do with it. He just
ignored it. Yeah, I mean, that section that we just read, this is what the Oxford World Classics summarises each of the section as read. So this is the line and page numbering conventions that are standard for this text. So this is 17, we read 169 to 182, which is halfway through this section of Shem the penman. And so from 169 all the way through to 193, which we didn't get to. So we're right in the middle of a character assassination of the writer Shem by Sean, his brother. So this is Sean tearing his brother down and making sure that we know about all the terrible things that he's done in his life. We get 25 pages of abuse.
Is that how you see it?
Yeah, and then so the next section, and that's the way it's broken down. The next section is a Shem apologising, but we'll get to that in the next episode. But yes, there's a lot of stuff in here, and but
it obviously takes commitment to be able to do it. Because it's very easy to go, I'm not going, this is too hard, throw it in the corner, and which is what most people do.
Yes.
They go, this doesn't make sense. I have no idea what this is about. So you really have to commit to it.
Well, I think people make two mistakes. The first mistake they make is trying to read it silently, and the second mistake they make is trying to read for narrative sense, because Joyce was not interested in that. He'd done that. He was very much one of those people who said, I've mastered that. I don't need to do that again. So what we read in Dubliners, which are short stories, very easy to understand, he didn't ever want to do that again. He completed that. He wrote a play called Exiles. He didn't want to do that again. He wrote Portrait of the Artist of the Young Man, which is a little bit more abstract about his own life. Didn't want to do that again. So then Ulysses, and then the day book, and then we have the night book here. So he doesn't want narrative. He doesn't want us to be able to read it silently to ourselves on the train. he wants us to puzzle over it. And this is what we're doing, or hearing it out loud, or hearing things that we wouldn't have heard, or realizing that a way that a word is written down encourages a phonetic interpretation, which then leads to a funny sort of phrasing, things like that. So anything else stand out to you about the...
Well, the thing that always occurs to me when I read bits like this is, what was Joyce thinking?
Mm-hmm.
What was he thinking about how his peers and the people around him in Dublin are going to think of this?
Yeah.
They can't make sense of it. And how's he going to make any money out of it?
Yeah. And as we talked about in the first episode, he was releasing this piece by piece and was being destroyed by all the critics, including his brother, Stanislaus Joyce, who was one of his big critics, and then Sylvia Beach, who had published his works. She was his great champion, but by the end, and then she ended up having to publish another book to defend this book. But this was always...
It would have been there, wouldn't it?
But did he...
Shakespeare and Company, yeah.
Yeah, but did he care? Was he writing it for readers? Was he writing
it?
it?
I think he cared deeply. I think this is what killed him.
Yeah.
He died very soon after this was published.
How old was he when he died?
Because it strikes me as if it's like it's very internalized, and so it's like he's expressing himself, and it's really irrelevant if anyone ever reads it or whatever. If he was writing to please an audience, it wouldn't have been so
abstract
and ungettable.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was
a good word. That's
ungettable.
That's a Joyce word.
It really is ungettable. That would fit right in here. And Joyce was 58 when he died.
58.
Yeah. Died in Zurich in 1941. This came out in 1939, and I think
he spent most of his time in Paris, though, didn't he? After
and Zurich, yeah. So I'm glad I got a chance to share some Finnegans Wake with you, because I can't get you to listen to the podcast. So I'm going to bring the podcast to you and show you how the sausage is made. In that I read it straight through without stopping. So if any listeners think that I'm editing in all of these things, I've got witnesses now.
Oh my God!
And full credit to my mum and dad for sitting and putting up with the whole reading. They could have wandered off and put the TV on, but
put the kettle on now.
I wonder how many people in this world think, I've got a bit of spare time up my sleeve. What will I do? I know what I'll do. I'll read Finnegans Wake.
Yeah, it's true. I
Not many. I know one in Canada.
Yeah. It is a crazy project, but the fact that we're now officially more than a quarter of the way through the book, so we've now reached 182 pages into this book. I didn't think I was going to get through page 1, so I'm delighted with how this has gone.
Are you getting good feedback?
And we are getting good feedback. We have some listeners who are from all sorts of different corners of the world, and people from Ireland, and we have we have people joining our Patreon who
what do the Irish have to say about it?
No one's spoken to me about it yet, so I'm assuming that I'm persona non gratis in Dublin. So, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe
a name like Malone, you probably are.
Maybe we're exiled to the other end of the world. So that is all the time we have for Wake. Join us next week for the second half of 1-7. I've been Toby Malone. Thank you so much to my parents, Mick and Jo Malone, for their support. Thank you guys for braving the Wake.
Been my pleasure.
Thank you for allowing us to join you.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really good. It's been worth the wait, I think. So until then, we'll see you next week, Trisky decaphobes. This is episode 13, so those are people scared of the number 13. You get it? Get it?
No.
Oh, okay.
This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegans Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegans Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegans Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.